Greetings, salutations, and welcome to the Kreeger cast. I'm joined here today by Jack.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about your career a little bit. What exactly is it that you do currently?
I work as a freelance artist. I don't work for any particular studio or company. I just work from home and just look for postings online, just create artwork for people, illustrations mostly. Sometimes I do more graphic design stuff, but mostly illustrations.
Cool. So, like illustrations for magazines or websites or.
A lot of it is concept art related. A lot of tabletop. Actually, I see a lot of tabletop gaming studios. Actually, like one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm working on ship layouts for a like a tabletop. I guess you would say like a sci-fi tabletop game where you control like a ship, and they need the interior layout that's conforms to like a matrix grid. So I'm just doing that.
A ship of the sea or a ship in
A
space?
spaceship,
Oh,
like a
okay.
sci-fi ship.
Okay. Um, okay, so you're a conceptual artist mostly?
Yeah. Well, I guess you would say concept artist. I think a conceptual artist is like a some kind of avant-garde thing. I might be wrong about that, but
No, I think you're totally on point there, although I could be off about that too. But okay, so you've done a little bit of work. I've seen you do a lot of tank modeling.
yeah, I also do some 3D models. I don't find as much work with that, but I still try and look for it just because it's a skill I have. Like recently, one thing I did was I created basically a World War I tank that was they gave me a sketch for the design, and I just modeled it based off of that sketch. The tank itself is like semi-fictional. It was something that was planned. It was some German tank that was planned on being built, but they never actually came up with an actual, I guess you'd say, like blueprints for it or any kind of prototype. So the design itself is somewhat fictionalized.
So that was a German design.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Dear listener, since there are no photographs, the best example I could give of it is similar to a Whippet tank.
Yeah, it kind of confused me because it looked like a British tank. Because
Yeah.
I'm familiar with World War I and World War II tanks. It's kind of a hobby, I guess you could say. It's just learning about armored vehicles from that era. But yeah, it had a very British design. I'm not sure the terminology, but it had like a similar track layout to like the Mark One, Mark Two, like the British Mark tanks, as well as those. I don't know what you'd call them, but like the insets on the sides of the tracks, on the armor around the
Mhm.
tracks. But supposedly it was a German tank, which was
Okay.
kind of strange. It could be they were just copying British design since the British did invent the tank.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the first British tank.
Little Willie?
Little Willie,
Was
yeah.
it Little Willie?
It was Little Willie. Because I'm like, it wasn't little. It was little something, and then when you said Willie, yeah,
Yeah, it
it's
was
Little
Little
Willie.
Willie, and I
Served in World War II, don't you know?
I don't think it did.
Did.
Are you sure about that?
Yep.
I thought it was disassembled before World War I ended.
So the original tank, Little Willie, ended up doing patrol duty outside of a base in England during World War
Oh,
II, and is I think at the Bovington Tank Museum.
I could have sworn it was disassembled.
Okay.
Maybe I'm thinking of
Um,
something else, but
no, I'm pretty certain the prototype tank, which I don't think ever saw action.
yeah, it
Um,
won because it was just a prototype.
yeah, but I'm pretty certain it did guard duty during World War II.
Yeah.
Why don't you discuss a little bit about how you got into art, and I will check on that.
Uh, well, I guess I always drew. Like it's just one of the. I guess it's a cliche, but it's I've always just been drawing. I never really stopped. Even when I was a little kid. Well, actually, it's funny because I was actually just went to my dad's house to clear out some stuff since I used to live with him a few years ago. I'm just clearing out more of my stuff. But one of the things I was clearing out was a bunch of drawings from when I was younger. Like not just stuff from high school, but also stuff from when I was in elementary school, stuff from when I was like 8 years old and 6 years old. So it's kind of funny to have all that. But yeah, I never really stopped drawing. And during my college years, I didn't go to an art school. I just went to a Cal State, and I took art. I took some general ed classes, but my major was illustration, and I mostly took life drawing classes and classes like relating to rendering. It's kind of funny because there's the, I guess you'd say, like the meme of art schools being like a horribly expensive ripoff, which I guess they kind of are. Like both my sisters went to LCAD. Only one of them went to LCAD for more than a year, but and that was like $20,000 a semester or something like that.
And that didn't cover room and board. That was just
she could just drive there.
So that was literally just enrollment.
Yeah. Well, they did. I don't think they'd even could even allow for room and board because I've been to the campus and it's small. It's just like a few buildings, but the college I went to, it was just a general university, and the art department was actually the smallest department. It was like the crappiest little department on the entire campus. Well, no, it really was, because they actually had spent all this money, like millions and millions of dollars, putting up all these new buildings, for like their I think they had like a law. I forget exactly what what the specific departments were, but like their business classes, that section of the school, they built this. I don't want to say like high tech, but they built this very nice looking building. It was interesting looking at it, kind of like a U shape with like a courtyard, and it's all nice. And then the art department was in this little corner of the campus
in a shack.
Pretty much all the buildings were like built when the school originally opened, and they were all kind of falling apart.
Temporary buildings?
They weren't temporary. They were just kind of just not very good looking, and they were just sort of falling apart. But the staff was actually really good, though. It's like all the money went into the actual staff. Like,
that's probably the best place to spend the money.
Yeah, certainly. And it's funny. I feel like I kind of dodged a bullet because a lot of the stories I hear about art schools, it just sounds like a ripoff, like student mills, like teachers, professors who, I don't want to say don't know what they're doing, but just don't care.
It seems like they don't have a grounding in the basics. I've found that a lot of people who go to art school come out not being able to do realistic drawing, realistic painting.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that has to. There's different kinds of, I guess you could say, art schools and art departments. I was illustration, but there's also graphic design. There's also fine arts. I'm not really sure why you would spend the money to do that, but for financial reasons. But
to become a teacher is the only.
Yeah, I guess.
What does that say though about your field? When the biggest prospect is teaching other people about the field to become teachers that teach about the field.
Yeah, that's a real Ouroboros. Or Ouroboros, however you pronounce that.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. So
the snake eating its own tail?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Just by the way, dear listener, I looked it up, and yes, Little Willie did survive World War One. It was in relatively kind of use until 1940, at which point the base that it was at offered to scrap it. And the Bovington Museum somehow ended up with it.
I think they built a replica.
No, it is the original.
They reassembled it.
No, it was never taken apart.
It was just in a warehouse, and then they.
Oh no, it was outside. It was specifically, they left it outside the base as like just a thing for people to see, but they disarmed it and all that. So it might have like a replica engine in it and whatnot. But the shell is all original, I'm pretty certain. But the Bovington Tank Museum does have a episode on that, so if you want to, you can go check out their episode. And they do talk about its involvement in World War II. But now that we've been talking about it so much, I'm pretty certain that it was hearsay, that it wasn't like hard fact that it did anything. But even if it did, it was just patrolling a base.
Yeah, I mean, there wouldn't have been much use for it in World War II other than towing things, maybe.
Yeah, which actually, I want to dispel a rumor that I've been seeing spread around that's completely off topic, but I want to dispel this rumor here and now. During the fall of one of the major German cities, I can't remember which, there's a famous photograph taken of two British World War I tanks as rusting hulks out in a field, and the implication is that the Germans used them as like a last-ditch weapon against the Soviets. That is not the case. These tanks were set up in a mock battle in a park for people to go and kind of look at, like they were staged, like they were in a battle. And the reason why we think that, the Germans used it for defense is indeed some German infantrymen used them as cover. So it's not like they were fighting in the tanks, but they did use them as cover. Anyway, art school.
Yeah, I've just heard some horror stories about other art schools, or like dedicated art schools where they aren't really teaching technical art to their students, where it's just kind of a mill to, well, essentially just fleece money off of students.
They don't even teach them the business skills they need to run their own little art studio.
Yeah, or that, or just networking and putting yourself out there for studios or people to find you. Plus, I've just seen a lot of cases of people going to art school and then coming out drawing worse than.
Yeah, there's a particular style that's really fashionable right now that I refer to as, I won't swear, but terrible watercolor.
Terrible watercolor.
Yeah, there's this, like, I don't know how else to describe it, but a digital watercolor palette that is kind of smeary and not very realistic.
I would have to see an image of that.
If you saw it, you would recognize it as, like, most of what common art students produce. Like, that, I think that's a style that's in right now. Well, it's our era's Art Deco, for lack of a better term.
I mean, maybe I would, maybe if you could find an example, because one of the things that makes me think of is, I guess you could say a method of creating concept art for movies or for games, or, well, I guess if you're unaware, concept art is essentially just creating designs for characters or environments or vehicles or props. Oh, thank you. But the thing is, you have to do that quickly. You have to do that very quickly. And a lot of concept artists find, I don't want to use the term cheating, but you have to find quick ways to make that stuff. And a lot of the time you have art that looks great at a distance. Oh, okay. This is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm showing him a picture.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not bad, but it's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of it's kind of technical, but seems kind of pointless.
Well, it's just I've seen that style show up more and more, particularly on Instagram.
That doesn't seem too watercolory, though. That looks.
I'm not an artist. I'm not using the correct terms.
Yeah,
but
that just looks like oil, or really any other kind of. Actually, looks like anything but watercolor.
Okay.
I don't want to chastise you too much.
Well, no, you're the artist. That's what you're here to teach me and the audience about.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting art style. It's just not one I prefer.
Yeah, well, it definitely just looks like a student project where it looks like they didn't really know what to paint, so they just painted their dog. Although I guess that's most art throughout history. You go to an art museum and it's mostly life
dog
studies.
Or fruits or
Yeah, well, fruits are great. If you're trying to learn lighting and learn color and learn, I guess you would say, the material qualities of an object.
Mm-hmm.
Because something a lot of fruit do is, I don't know if this is the term, like the general term, but they have a quality. I'm just going to call it subsurface scattering.
Okay.
That's what it's called in 3D. If you do 3D rendering, but basically it means a very very slightly translucent object, like your ears.
Depth.
Yeah, like if you've ever looked at a photo, well, not even a photo, just a person who's being backlit, and their ears are
Yeah.
semi
Transparent.
transparent. Yeah,
You get the light coming through.
yeah,
and-
or like a grape. A grape
Yeah.
has subsurface scattering. So if you're painting fruit, fruit obviously are colorful. There's lots of different colors and different kinds of fruit, so it's useful for experimenting with different colors, but also different material qualities. Like an apple is more specular looking, more glossy. An orange is a little more matte.
Mhm.
And then also the things that you might place the fruit in, like a bowl. So painting fruit's just very useful as a very just a good introduction to rendering surfaces.
I've actually always wondered why fruit is so stereotypical, and I
Yeah.
guess you just gave a very good explanation as to why.
Yeah. It's also just because it's nice to look at. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look historically, fruit it's just ecstasy, if you, to put it that in kind of a weird way. A lot of art that goes beyond just, drawings of or paintings of bowls of fruit use fruit as like a metaphor for
Exuberance.
yeah, like sexual pleasure,
Yeah.
and things like that. Like I always think of what is his name? Hieronymus Bosch has that.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the painter?
I'm familiar with his name, and I'm
Yeah.
placing it with an art style, but I'm not necessarily certain. that I'm
He
doing it
invented
correctly.
surrealism like hundreds of years before surrealism was invented, if that makes any sense. I believe he was around in the late 1400s. I might be wrong about that. I'm not. I'm sure like one art history student is going to listen to this and cringe.
I was going to say, don't worry, Jack. No one's ever wrong on the internet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not an art historian. I mean, I took some art history classes. I know a little bit about this stuff, but not. I'm sure someone can correct me.
Like someone won't correct me about the tanks earlier.
Yeah. Someone plays World of Tanks and is going to tell you that you're wrong.
It's what happens, and hey, it's good to learn.
Anyway, so I believe he was Flemish. I guess that's irrelevant, but he basically painted in kind of a semi-realistic style, but had kind of a surrealist horror element. But his most famous work is, I don't recall the title, but it's a 3-piece, a triptych work of art, and it's 3 panels, and the first panel depicts, I guess you could say, Eden. It depicts an Adam and an Eve, and in this kind of a beautiful, serene, natural-looking environment. Nothing's really otherworldly. I think in the background there's some strange structures that imply like a heaven or some kind of beyond world, but it looks very natural. Second panel is lots of humans everywhere, but also lots of strange, otherworldly things. Like he draws these very, very interesting looking, like I guess you could just say demons or monsters. They don't look overly threatening, like it isn't like a devil or like a video game enemy. It's difficult to describe them, but they look. A lot of them are like birds, like weird bird people. But so the second panel is all these humans kind of frolicking with all these monsters. But also to get to the point with fruit, there's a lot of fruit imagery in this, and with people holding giant cherries or giant strawberries, which seems nonsensical, but the point is humans, I guess you could say, engaging in sin, because remember this 1400s, it's kind of the theme of Christianity. And the third panel is hell.
Okay.
Yeah, just blunt. It sticks out a lot from the other two panels, but I mean, not just in terms of theme, but colors. Because the first two, a lot of greens, a lot of blues, very pleasing. Third panel is blacks and, kind of burnt brown colors and fiery reds. And it's all these humans in this hell being eaten and tortured by monsters.
I think that's probably why I know of this artist. Is I think
That panel gets
Yeah.
used in everything. You see it. It's just a famous painting. Like usually the centerpiece. It isn't necessarily the focal point, but usually, if the image is used, sometimes it's cropped, and they crop, and there's that large frog, human, demon, baby thing. It's kind of hard to describe it. He's a really amazing art. He was a really amazing artist. Like just his designs and imagination and everything. Like
the H.R. Geiger of his time.
yeah, kind of. That's H.R. Giger. No, I pronounced it Geiger for a long time.
Is it Giger?
I'm pretty sure it's Giger.
Okay.
Because whenever I watch I've seen any kind of official documentary about him or newscast, it was always Giger. I always assumed it was Geiger because you just think Geiger or Geiger counter, but it's
People say it that way often, but
yeah.
it doesn't.
I guess it doesn't matter, but very. The thing is, though, he wasn't that influential because his kind of freakish surrealist paintings never really caught on. Like it's almost like he was way ahead of his time, like hundreds of years ahead of his time. Amazing.
Like the Chrysler Airflow. Sorry. That was only like 5 years ahead of its time. But
yeah, I don't know anything about cars.
It doesn't matter. So, okay. So you've been doing a lot of concept art for video games and board games and that sort of thing.
Yeah, less so for video games, mostly because something I've noticed, and this is just something I've noticed recently, but video game studios are very insular.
Mm-hmm.
They rely on, I guess you could say, labor from within their own studios. Whereas board games, and tabletop games, I guess it's obvious, but way easier to make.
Yeah.
Less complex technical things go into them, which isn't to say that's a bad thing necessarily.
No.
But a lot of those studios just seem to, I don't want to say rely on external labor, but just seem more open to using freelance artists to create artwork for them.
Any board games you've worked on that we might have heard of? Any board games you worked on that actually came out?
I honestly can't say I've actually looked into whether or not they were released.
Okay.
And to be quite honest, I haven't done that much work in terms of like concept art and stuff, and I only recently started actually working professionally. I'll be entirely honest. For a few years after university, I just worked in a store.
Well, but you've been, as far as I know, you've been selling art from time to time here and there and doing freelance stuff.
Yeah.
You've done work for me in the past,
Yeah.
And in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's just I guess you could say that's a little bit of a regret of mine is not doing more freelance work earlier on. I guess I was just never proactive enough doing that sort of thing. Plus, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but college kind of burned me out.
I know it sounds pedantic, and I never really understood what it meant until recently, but that whole thing about just keep moving forward, just keep working on it. I've always wondered what that meant because, you can't just keep working forward. You have to find a problem, solve the problem, then you can move forward. Mm-hmm. But that's actually not the case. Oftentimes, it's particularly like with what you're doing. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing as many freelance jobs
and that's what I'm doing now because I don't have a lot of time to really do a whole lot else right now. For the last couple of months, I've just been basically nonstop drawing and nonstop 3D modeling. Well, more drawing though because I can't find as much 3D work, and I have a smaller 3D portfolio, but that's besides the point. But yeah, and as far as keep pushing on, that's something I found too is you really have to do that because sometimes you just can't get something to work quite right, but you can't waste too much time on it.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of cases where I just couldn't get something to look good or to look as good as I wanted it to be, but I had just put too many hours into it, and so I send it to the client, I send a sample image to the client because usually I don't send the final render
Yeah.
until I've been paid.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, well, usually the way I do it is I ask for half up front, and then I make it, and then I send a preview, and then when I get the rest of the money, then I send the final product. And then usually I'll update clients with works in progress along the way. But yeah, sometimes I just think something just doesn't look good or doesn't look quite right, and then I'll send it to the client, and they love it, and it's like, okay, well, as long as I get paid.
It doesn't really.
Yeah,
as long as they're
like
happy
it,
and
yeah.
you get paid, that is the point. And as they say, the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah, and that's something you really have to. That's something I really had to learn. Because I'm sure every artist has this, but there's so many things I've worked on in the past that I just never completed because I kept trying to get them right, and I never put them out there. There's lots of stuff on a hard drive somewhere that never saw the light of day.
And frankly, I'm gonna be bluntly honest with you, Jack. I've seen a lot of your work that you haven't published that is just fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you.
And it's a shame that, frankly, more people haven't seen it, even in its state of unfinishedness.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Yeah.
I do hate to say this, but I do fanboy over what you do. I like your style. I like the motifs you pick. The the way you decide to, or what you decide to draw fits in line with my hobbies and interests as well.
Yeah, a lot of military stuff. I've always been interested in that.
Yeah, you do some really fantastic tanks and soldiers and whatnot in all sorts of different unique ways. That you have this combination of realistic and fantasy, particularly in the way you do soldiers. The way you outfit them in their kit and all that is just fantastic.
Yeah, I guess that's always just trying to think about strengths and weaknesses that I have. I think I've always been very good about considering the practicality of designs, like thinking about, okay, this is, in the case of some soldiers uniform design, what kind of gear do they have? They would probably need this and this and this and this. Not just thinking in terms of what looks cool. I guess something I've always been negligent of, and this is something I'm still trying to work on, is just getting people to look right, like just drawing people, because I always kind of skip over the face. The face is almost I don't draw faces very well, and I've always had anatomical issues. It's kind of funny because I took more life drawing classes in college than in any other type of class. Like I think I took 5 or 6 life drawing classes. Mm-hmm. Life drawing being where you actually draw the nude model. Model comes in and they strip and then you draw them. And I could just never get anatomy in my head. We even had classes where we had to spend a month learning all the different muscle groups and the bone structure and all this stuff, and I mean I did it, but it kind of glossed over it mentally, it just didn't stick with me as much. I'm not saying I didn't learn anything from those classes, but I feel like I was always more interested in rendering related courses, like life drawing related to, or like life painting, where you paint the fruit or you paint the objects. I want to say, my strengths just on a visual level are color and rendering and lighting. And
definitely
shadows.
lighting.
Yeah, the shadows. But I just can't really get the bodies and the faces right. It's something I still need to work on.
Well, it's good that you want to pursue that and work on that. but one of the things I've always liked about your art style, particularly when it comes to drawing people, is it has this almost toy-like feel. When you draw your smaller figures, they look like toy soldiers that came to life. When you draw your larger figures, they look like insanely quality action figures. And I always thought that was something you were shooting for. I didn't realize that.
It's just a happy accident.
Yeah, particularly, I'm thinking of this little World War One styled German soldier you did way back when. That was like the perfect embodiment of a toy soldier come to life.
Yeah, I think I might have those here. But that's something I've had in my head for a while. Because I also have ambitions of doing... Well, I'd like it for it to be a strategy game. But I guess it could also be... Is this not the right one?
I could have sworn I saw it as a digital file somewhere, like either on...
I'm sure I have them somewhere.
That's one of the drawings that I always think of. When I think of your work, I think of that drawing there.
That's more of an...
But that's recent.
Yeah, that's more of an anime-styled one. One of the things I've been doing recently, I've been going to anime and comic conventions and just selling prints of some of my art.
Yeah, let's actually switch topic for a little bit here and talk about how you're getting started as an artist that isn't just taking orders, fulfilling orders. You're now doing your own thing, selling at conventions.
Well, that's a little bit of a, I guess, misconception, because in a way, I'm still like, I guess you could say taking orders.
Yeah, you're still bound by what the market wants.
Yeah, because I'm drawing a lot of It's funny because I'll draw. I'm like, okay, I don't really watch that much anime and stuff like that.
The way you're looking at me.
But well, and the stuff that I do like, it's kind of old and not that popular. So I have to look out. I talk to my weeaboo friends. I'm like, okay, what's popular now? And then I just, they tell me what's in, and then I try and draw that. Make something that would be appealing to.
Hence the Castlevania stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Castlevania is an old series, but there's the Super Smash Bros. Games, and they unveiled Simon Belmont, which is the protagonist from the original Castlevania. So I figured, that would be cool. I really love the kind of that D&D barbarian look that he has. I've always kind of liked that art style too. So I figured I would do an ink illustration of that, because something I do that not a lot of other people do is I actually draw in ink.
Yeah, I love that you do that.
Yeah. There's kind of it's almost like it has the retro appeal. It's like people who listen to vinyl records, even though it's 2018 now.
I think there's a lot more value in physical media too.
Yeah, well, and also in the case of creating artwork, it definitely creates a different feel when you're restricted in a certain way. To get a little bit of off topic, can't speak right now.
It's all
off
fine.
Topic. I always think of Star Wars, like the original Star Wars movies, when I think of limitations. Because you look at the original Star Wars movie, and it's kind of this ramshackle thing. Not entirely, like they had some cutting edge special effects, but it's like, they went out to, was it Death Valley or was it Tunisia that they shot?
Little column A, little column B. So out in Death Valley, they shot a lot of the Jawa scenes. So if that's what you're thinking about,
yeah,
a lot of the Jawa scenes were shot out in Death Valley. In fact, there's a museum there to the Jawas, which I find funny.
Yeah,
and then a lot of the Luke homestead or the Skywalker homestead is, or I guess it wasn't the Skywalkers, but yeah.
That's funny how seamless all that is. Yeah, there's a bit of a I don't want to say it's guerrilla style filmmaking, because it's not, but there is an element of it of the original Star Wars. There is an element of guerrilla filmmaking to the original Star Wars that kind of
lost.
Yeah, well, that got lost with not only the prequels but the new films as well, where shooting on location and being limited by the physical props and the physical models that they used for the special effects. It was kind of this magic elixir that made some really good movies. the prequels, Lucas tried to force the green screen and CG on everything, and CG
That
is
one
great.
did it.
Like CG you can do amazing stuff with that, but it's like that's all those movies used. Especially like Attack of the Clones. It looks like a video game, like an FMV game or something.
Yeah.
Point and click FMV from the 90s or something.
It's not that bad, but yeah, I can see what you mean.
Yeah, and so sometimes just restrictions could really help make something better, as paradoxical as that is. So in the case of ink, you're only limited to, I mean, and there's colored inks, but I just work in black and white. But you're only limited to just black ink, and that gives it a certain look. Shading with that or hatching with that, and the fact that you can't really, so like digital drawing where you could just increase your brush size or just erase things perfectly. You use hatching to give things a certain texture, and it gives it a certain style. And there's just people really like the novelty of that. It's something you don't see anymore because now so much art is digital.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's really a bad thing because digital has so many advantages. And I work in digital for the most part just because it's faster. And, you can't be slow if you want to actually make money doing this stuff.
People kind of want their stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, concept art has been around for a long time. Like going back to Star Wars, if you've ever looked up the Ralph McQuarrie concept art. Have you ever
Chewbacca was frightening.
Well, have you seen the Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Star Wars?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's what I'm talking about with the older style Luke and the older style Darth Vader. If I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of that, but I'm mostly talking about the way that art is rendered. Let me see if I could find some of it here. What's interesting about it is how rendered it is. It must have taken a long time for him to actually paint like that, versus digital art now, which you have to cut a lot of corners, and so a lot of modern concept art relies on like photo bashing, which is where you just take photographs and just sort of smush them together in Photoshop to create forms.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's some Ralph McQuarrie art. And you look at this must have taken days and days to paint.
So what we're seeing, dear listener, is a fully drawn photograph, or not photograph, but painting of the Millennium Falcon with Luke and many of the other Star Wars characters, fully colored, fully shadowed, with detail in what looks to be a very quick way, but an incredibly detailed way. It wasn't just thrown together in an afternoon, as you were saying.
Yeah. Well, and just the amount of detail and the fact that this was all physically painted as well.
That looks like it could have been a box for a model or something.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm sure McQuarrie actually used photo references. Like he probably had the model or like a photograph of that Imperial ship.
So the photo he just showed me was a picture of I think it's Palpatine's Imperial shuttle. It's an L-class Lambda shuttle.
The actual.
Some of
I used to be super into Star Wars. I remember all that stuff.
Some of my friends are really into the Star Wars miniature series, and that's what we played.
No, all that stuff's cool. I love.
We're now looking at the Emperor's throne room.
I love the old Star Wars ship designs because they're so iconic. Well, not just the ships, but just everything. Like the Sandcrawler, or Luke's little speeder, 3-engine speeder.
So that was something that Chris and I were talking about in our Star Wars podcast. We did an hour and 20-minute Star Wars podcast. George Lucas was really good at world building.
Yeah.
Or at least bringing people in who could world build.
Yeah.
Because, look at, you're saying, all the original series, but even the prequels.
The prequels, the thing with the prequels is I think Lucas actually has some really good ideas. I mean, people will shit talk him for Jar Jar Binks, and, Jar Jar Binks is a pretty bad idea, but although... Well, actually, a little tangent. I think a lot of what killed Jar Jar Binks was the specific actor. And I don't want to say he's a bad, I'm fuck that guy, but I remember watching an interview with the guy who played Jar Jar Binks, and originally, who originally was going to play Jar Jar? It was Michael Jackson. Yeah, Michael Jackson wanted to.
I'm just speechless.
Yeah, he wanted to be in Star Wars. He approached Lucas, and Lucas was going to. He was okay with the idea of having Michael Jackson, but then
Not as Michael Jackson, though.
oh, well, he was going to play
Yeah.
but I think some of their talent scouts found this other guy. I forget his name, but the guy who ended up playing Jar Jar Binks, and the reason he has that annoying voice is just the actor was just trying some different voices, and he tried that voice, and the sad thing was, that in retrospect, that voice was how he talked to his kids, to like his little 4-year-old kid, to be funny. And it's kind of sad that he's trying to be cute, but then he ended up getting so much hate for ruining Star Wars, even though I don't really think.
No.
I don't think Jar Jar really ruined the prequels. I mean, those movies had lots of problems, but Lucas has lots of good ideas. I think it's just the problem with the prequels was that no one. I mean, Red Letter Media and all those guys.
No one said no.
Yeah, no one said no. Everyone just sort of went along with what he was doing. The original movies, he had good ideas and people went with those, and then his bad ideas, people said, maybe we should do things a little bit different. But no, I don't think Lucas is he's the worst person ever. It's funny. It's like the new movies kind of like Disney kind of redeemed Lucas in a way. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, I'm sure some people will disagree who are listening to this, but Lucas had a vision. Disney had no vision. Oh.
After a brief technical difficulty, we are back. So, as you were saying, Lucas had a vision, but Disney did not.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people accuse Lucas of being a cynical businessman, and I think that's true, but I think there is a side of Lucas that's very creative and wants to tell an interesting story in an interesting universe. And you definitely see that in the prequels. They are kind of cynical and in including a lot of things that are there for appealing to as wide an audience as possible, like casting Samuel Jackson to play a character that is Jackson's worst performance ever. Like, obviously, playing a reserved monk character, why would you get Samuel Jackson to do that? But anyway, he is you still see the creativity shine through in the prequels, in some of the designs of the ships and the aliens and the strange worlds they go to, and trying to explore the original trilogy world universe of Star Wars, with the Republic and the Jedi and the Sith and all this and that. And it's like that was fertile ground for some good movies. It's just no one held Lucas back, and there's all this kind of nonsense, and his demands for using green screens and everything. That's actually an interesting thing, though. One thing, if you go back and you watch the Star Wars prequels, something you'll notice about those movies, The Phantom Menace stands out a lot against the other two because it actually didn't use that much green screen or CGI compared to the other two. Attack of the Clones is every single shot has a green screen effect in it, except for some of the scenes when they're in that like Padme Villa Naboo place. And Revenge of the Sith has a lot of green screen as well. Not quite as much, but still pretty reliant on it. Phantom Menace, though, actually has a lot of scenes that are shot in location. Like Tatooine, there isn't a whole lot of green screen other than the pod race. A lot of the Naboo, like the forest they're running through, that's a real forest. I think Naboo itself, or like the city,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously the establishing shots are CG, or I think some of them actually were models, but
Or matte paintings, by chance?
yeah,
Maybe?
yeah, I think some actually. You know, there's a video. You can go look this up. Just look up Phantom Menace practical effects or something like that. You'll be surprised. A lot of that movie was actual practical effects. It's really weird. There's a shot of the Naboo city that's like a model they built, and it even has the waterfalls. You'd think that would be CG, but it's actually like salt. Like they had salt flowing over the edge
Huh.
of the model, and it when slowed to a certain speed, like they shot
Looks
it.
like water?
Yeah, I think they did digitally add to it a little bit. They built a lot of like actual models, like life size models, like that little boat that they float around in at the beginning.
Yeah.
That was a model. I think the droid tank, they built a model for that.
There's some model work in episode 2 as well. They always bring that back when a lot of the myth turns on the Mythbusters
Oh yeah.
worked on the models for episode 2. Specifically, the Camino, or the cloning facilities. Those platforms were models.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's funny though because it stands out a lot when you watch the Phantom Menace.
Oh,
I mean, if you're the kind of person that would go back and watch that movie,
I still don't believe that they didn't edit the platforms out and CGI them back in. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
Just by the way they look.
yeah. I think a part of it is, and this is a problem in a lot of movies, and it's a problem in the new Star Wars movies too. They'll use practical effects for things, and it looks CGI because of the way it's shot.
Yep.
They'll shoot it with digital cameras, which makes things look a little too clean.
Yeah, and the higher frame rate is
Yeah,
supposedly an issue.
actual celluloid film has a different look to it. It's subtle, but you can see it. But also, it's editing or one of the movie one of the more. I always think of Fury Road, which used a lot of actual physical models and props, but that had some stuff that looked CG just because they shot it digitally and they green screened a lot of things where the things they were green screening were like real models, like life-sized physical props, but they composited them together, which made them look fake.
I would actually argue that, to me, personally, as a uninformed person, Fury Road looks absolutely perfect, except for one scene.
Oh, yeah?
There's one particular thing that it stands out like a sore thumb, and I am so furious about it. Oh.
You made a little pun.
I didn't mean to.
That's funny. Well, what shot is that?
When Nux drives the war rig into the arch to destroy it.
Oh, is it the guitar?
Nope. Even the guitar.
The wheel.
The steering wheel.
The wheel, yeah. Everyone hates the wheel. You always see that on comment sections online. Oh, that stupid wheel.
Yeah.
Ruins everything.
Literally, you edit that out and it's a perfect film.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny, though? That wheel wasn't CG either.
What?
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. They took that prop and they basically filmed it at like every angle that they would need. They took still photos and like a stop motion kind of thing. But it looks fake because the lighting doesn't match.
It looks like it was thrown in there just for the 3D effect.
It probably was. And it's just the funniest thing, though, because it wasn't CG, but like that's the thing with CG is it isn't just CG that's the problem. It's also like modern compositing effects and digital editing.
Huh.
The big problem when doing that stuff is just the lighting doesn't match, and you can, whatever conditions they filmed that wheel in weren't the same as the actual war rig, being filmed outside and smashing into something. Plus, I think it just looks fake because that's like something that would never happen. Like the wheel flying towards the screen, that's something that would never happen. Like it would never go towards you in that way, and then you wouldn't go into the mouth. Like that's an obvious fake. That scene, what they should have done rig crashes, the guitar vehicle behind it crashes, and some stuff flies out. Don't cut to all the other crap flying around. Cut to like the wheel on the ground rolling. Like here's what we do: low angle shot from the front of the vehicle, aiming at the escaping vehicle that Max and all those other characters are in. And it's just you just see the horizon and just the flatlands, and it's kind of a plain shot with just the vehicle driving away. And then you just see the wheel, the steering wheel, roll kind of in that direction and just fall over.
Okay.
It's not. I think that would work a lot better because that's a thing that could happen, you know.
Especially with the way they do keep showing that the steering wheel's not attached, that they pull it off.
Well, and then also just on a visual level, you see they get away, and then you also see that this wheel, which is kind of the symbol of
the war rig.
Yeah, of the war rig,
and nuts.
Sort of slowing down and then falling over. The war rig's gone. They can't get to him. You know, Immortan Joe's army is effectively destroyed. It's symbolized by the wheel, which is literally his symbol, the wheel with the skull, rolling and then slowing down and falling over.
Huh.
That's how I would do that.
By the way, spoiler alert for Fury Road.
Oh, yeah, the movie that has the most obvious plot in the world. No, I love that movie, but you wouldn't tell someone, oh, this has an amazing story. The story is cars blow up. And that's totally fine. The movie... Okay, you know why people like that movie? Because it didn't try to pretend to have a good story. There was barely any dialogue. If you're going to shoot a movie that has barely any story and is more about kind of the setting and the action, you do it minimally. You minimal dialogue, visual storytelling, almost like a I don't want to say like a comic book. Well, actually, that's the thing I like about the movie. It kind of feels like a comic book, but I mean that in a good way, like very stylized, minimal plot, like a one-off. Yeah,
it's a story that takes place over 2 days. It doesn't need a world-shattering plot.
Yeah, because it's kind of funny. People have weird expectations when they go into movies, or they think, oh, this movie had a bad story. There was no story. It's like story is not really the only aspect of filmmaking.
I actually have a big gripe with the concept of character development.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, people are like, oh, a movie's only good if there's character development. I counter with Monk.
Monk,
the TV show.
Oh, I never saw that.
Oh, the character of Monk goes through, 6, 7 seasons. Maybe more, maybe less. Doesn't matter. Hundreds of episodes where he has opportunities to change and doesn't. It's not that the show's episodic where he always has to return back to wherever he was. Some changes do stick. But there's a compelling character that we love and we like to see him do things that doesn't need to grow. You know what I mean? Growth in a character isn't necessary if there's growth in the outer world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's solving a problem. We see a problem, he solves the problem. That's the arc. You know, the character doesn't need the arc necessarily as long as there's something happening. And with Fury Road, you do have that, you know, basically they're just trying to escape Mountain Joe. That's the plot.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah, it's kind of just a framework to paint action onto. Nux has a pretty good character arc, I'd say. Actually, I actually liked Max's arc as well.
I'm not saying arcs aren't important. I'm just saying that you can have a good movie without one.
Yeah, it's almost like the characters in that are sort of just a way to paint action and the setting. Mostly the setting, actually. That's actually what I took away the most about the movie was the world building. There's just lots of interesting details in the movie. I don't know if you noticed this, but something I liked was the 3 different villain factions: Immortan Joe and the People Eater, and the Gastown guys, and the Bullet Farmer. They all had their own kind of troops,
Style.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you notice, Immortan Joe's troops are painted in that they're the black and white. They look like ghosts or like skeletons. They're supposed to be, almost like they're aware they're going to die, so they paint themselves accordingly. But something I like too is the Gastown soldiers look totally different. They're wearing like gas masks and protective gear, obviously to protect against the fumes in the refineries they work at. And then the Bullet Farmer, his soldiers, some of his are painted like war boys, but they're painted with yellow paint, which I think is interesting. But I kind of wonder if that's supposed to imply that they're covered in piss.
Okay.
Well, because you need urine to make gunpowder, at least traditional gunpowder. Although I don't know if they'd be firing actual gunpowder through modern weapons, but maybe they are.
So you can actually do that, by the way? That's a thing?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's a thing. I'm hoping to get one of my buddies on who will talk about that. But, what's funny is I totally noticed the difference in their vehicles. I noticed the difference in their leaders. I never noticed the difference in the troops.
Yeah, it's kind of subtle, and there's like a scene that was cut out of the movie that shows it a little more, where it shows a lot of the different factions, troops sort of assembling, and you notice all the differences, and you also notice the difference in color with the different factions, like the Immortan Joe, his vehicles are mostly black.
Yep.
The People Eaters have kind of this like a reflective like chrome color. The Bullet Farmers are all yellow. But also, another interesting detail, and I only saw this only noticed this when it was pointed out online. The Bullet Farmer has those trucks that, like the claw trucks at the end of the movie that harpoon the war rig, and then they deploy the rakes that, like anchors. The reason they have those, though, I never thought of this until someone pointed this out. It's because the reason that the Bullet Farmer has those, and you notice the Bullet Farmer because they're all yellow colored, they're supposed to be, he's the Bullet Farmer. Those are like farming spent shell casings.
Huh.
That's what those vehicles are for. They're raking up spent shell casings after a battle to reload ammunition. Because you can do that, reloading shell casings.
Yeah, you can reload brass casings.
So there's lots of interesting things in the movie, like subtle visual details that kind of build the world. It's like the Dark Souls of movies.
Yes, isn't everything. Jack, you wouldn't know this because unfortunately you haven't had an opportunity to listen to my podcast before you were on it. But in just about every episode we talk Frasier's, a little bit of Mad Max. Not really, but we've talked about Fury Road in the past.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of
not
funny.
Not to this detail, though.
Oh, yeah. No, I really liked the movie when it came. I I always love visual details in movies. And I also love post-apocalyptic settings. I love military vehicles.
Yeah.
So that movie was kind of tailor-made for me in a way. It has all the things that I like.
Dear audience, he's even wearing a leather jacket right now.
Yeah, an unfitting leather jacket that I picked up for $50 at a surplus store.
That's not bad.
It doesn't fit me totally.
So to bring this all back around, let's hear about your experiences at these conventions selling your art. So far I've only been to 2 conventions. That's more than I actually knew. I thought you had only been to the one.
And one I lost money at because basically a few months ago I scrambled and signed up for as many as conventions as I could, and I got into a few of them. But one I didn't realize it was in Washington, or rather I knew it was in Washington. I'm like, okay, I'll fly up there. I didn't realize it was a tiny convention that had like no attendees.
Oh.
And I lost money going up there. But what's interesting, I actually lost, and this is stupid of me that I did this, but I actually lost more money on the in-state traveling than on the plane ticket. Because I was staying with my friend's parents, and I was Ubering back and forth because I didn't want to buy I didn't want to rent a car from the airport because it was like, God, it was like $100 a day. It was crazy. Yeah. Well, that's way more than it usually is. Usually you could get a rental car for like $50.
I don't rent cars.
Yeah. But it was crazy expensive for some reason, and also I totally didn't realize how far away my friends' parents were from the convention site. So I wasted tons of money going up there. Well, not tons of money, but I was in the red a few $100s.
That's not bad for a first experience.
Yeah, but I did learn a lot there, and then at the second one, I basically earned all my money back because it was within driving distance. And then I also brought I have a friend who's a NEET, and not in employment, education, or training, so he has all the time in the world. So I brought him along, and he was just my booth partner and helped me out with some stuff. So, and then there's one I'm going to go to in Portland in October, at the end of October, and that's supposed to be a big one, and hopefully I earn a lot of money there.
One could hope.
Yeah. But yeah, they're fun. What I like about it is it doesn't really feel like work. I make money and it doesn't feel like work. I'm just at a booth and I'm just like, hey, how you doing? There's a little bit of like retail, I guess, feel. So it is. I guess it's a little bit like work where you just kind of have to be friendly, like a little too friendly with people, and trying to get their attention. But what I like about it is you can just talk about stuff there. Like, people will comment on my art and be like, oh, I really like this series. And, I watched it recently. I like this. And, just talking about stuff or talking about stuff that's totally unrelated. Or you'll meet other artists there and you'll just talk about, your experiences. And so it's kind of nice in that sense. And then just getting to make money selling your own art and people... honestly, the best thing is just compliments. Just people like telling, sometimes people will just pass over and be like, oh, that's cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But something I like, sometimes you'll get these people that will just gush over your art. Just be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And it's just like, whoa, It's, I'm taken aback, but then, it's very nice when that happens.
Unfortunately, I feel like I've done that to you a bit tonight, but I do really love your art.
Yeah.
So what are you actually selling there? Are you selling originals? Are you selling prints? If you're selling prints, what are they printed on?
Okay, so basically, I illustrate, whatever I'm doing, and it's all fan art of stuff because it's most of these conventions are like anime themed.
Yeah.
So I just, draw something of some illustration related to some anime, and then what I do is there's companies out there. You can just go to their website and then you just upload some of your art there, and it's not like it's displayed publicly. It's just on your account, and then you can order prints of this art, and you can pick your paper, like the type of material, like if it's glossy or if it's cardstock type paper. You pick the dimensions. You pick. You just put you set all these parameters, and then when everything's good and you've paid, they'll ship you all your art to you. And the company that I use, are very quick, and they've sent me good quality stuff. They'll send me not demos. What's the term?
Test prints?
Yeah, they'll just send test prints of the prints I've requested before they send the final results.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're ordering a lot.
Yeah, and usually for me to sell, I usually format everything in 11 by 17 inches, just because that's the largest size. That's, for some reason, it's just weirdly cheap compared to everything else. Like, I think 8.5 by 11 cardstock glossy is about the same price for some reason. But then everything bigger is like way more expensive. I guess it's just because 11 by 17 is just really common. But yeah, I mostly format everything in 11 by 17. I used glossy, but I think I'm going to try and do matte prints now because usually that looks nicer.
I would agree, particularly with your art style.
Yeah, glossy kind of makes things look a little plastic and cheap, a little bit.
If you used a if you used a ton more color in your art, a ton more color,
Yeah.
then gloss would be cool. But again, I'm not an artist. I just
Yeah.
saying what I like.
But yeah, I just order some nice quality prints of some of this fan art stuff, and then I just sell it at conventions. Although there wasn't actually a lot of art I was able to sell. Like I only had 8 different types of prints.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot, you know. I mean, I had like a few. I probably had about 100 actual copies of everything combined.
But you only have like 8 different things.
Yeah,
So that's why you've been working so hard on creating more stuff before Portland?
yeah. Although I just haven't been able to get to a lot of that in between, like working on stuff that's going to get me paid now.
Yeah.
Something I want to try doing though, and this is something my friend does, is selling enamel pins.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other night.
Yeah.
Did you ever look into that company I suggested?
Oh, I forgot to check.
I haven't looked into their quotes on enamel pins, but I'd imagine they're not too expensive.
Yeah. I want to try designing some enamel pins and or creating the designs, and then I've actually got some quotes from one of the companies I sent them to. I didn't actually get any made just because it was expensive.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to dump anything into it now.
Normally, there's some sort of tooling fee, and those are often quite pricey.
Yeah. For the ones that I was looking into for my designs, they were usually about $40 to $45 for the
Tooling.
and
That's not bad.
Yeah, well, it was a Chinese company, so it's probably on the lower side of quality, or at least in terms of the, I guess the overhead costs for.
The typical tooling fees I've seen are between $50 and $100, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, about $45 for the tooling fee, and then usually about 60 to 90 cents per.
That's good.
For enamel pin.
That's pretty good.
I might try and make some though for this next one. Maybe just make one design. Just spend $100 on it.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea at all, because you could easily, I would imagine, sell them for quite a bit. Particularly if it was something time exclusive, like maybe to that event. But then what do you do if you get stuck with leftovers?
Hey, Smash Bros. Comes out in November. I should make the Super Smash Bros. Symbol. Even though that would be
totally
yeah. Hey, but as long as no one says I can't do that. I don't know. I've seen people do trademark stuff before.
Oh yeah, people do all the time, but that doesn't mean you should, particularly when we're putting this out on the internet.
Yeah. Okay, just edit that part out. But
nope. You haven't listened to this podcast, have you?
Edit it out in real time. No. I don't know. Hey, okay. I may or may not do that.
Well,
I don't know.
Note the shirt I'm wearing. Listeners, because you cannot see, I'm wearing a shirt with the Starbucks mermaid in a lagoon surrounded by a couple of palm trees that says Maui, Hawaii on it. It just looks like a normal Starbucks shirt, but the logo was changed slightly. Yeah, so I wish you luck in Portland. I think our audience got a good idea of both your start in the art industry, as well as we talked about Mad Max and Star Wars for a bit, which I'm sure our audience enjoyed. So would you like to plug your Instagram, or is that not something you're comfortable doing at this point?
Yeah, for for the listeners, if you want to look up my Instagram, it's Henskelion. It's HENSKELION. That's just a nonsense word that doesn't mean anything.
Sounds good though.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I was just trying to look for. Basically, I just wanted to create some kind of word that doesn't exist. That sounds cool, and then also, if you look that up, that's all you get. Like, I didn't want to have Jack Art or something, because like that's going to be a thing. Or like, let's say I'll just make the name Red Oak or something, or like combine actual words.
Yeah.
You'll probably get some like milling industry or some milling company or something like that.
That's actually the problem with this podcast right here. If you search us under KreegerCast, you find us real easy. That's great. But if you type in Kreeger, we don't show up for a long ways.
You get the Archer character.
No, although for one of my other companies you do. But no, we mostly get there's a philanthropist named something, I think David Lloyd Kreeger, who started an art museum in Washington, D.C. called the Kreeger Museum. And so forever, when you search Kreeger, that's what comes up first. And then in addition to that, there's an organist named Patrick Kreeger. So I'm not even the most famous Patrick Kreeger. At least not yet. So, dear listeners, thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully Jack will be back. We can't wait to hear what happens in Portland. Well, at least I can't.
Yeah. Well, I'm also registered for some other ones as well in January. There's kind of weird 2 anime conventions that are back to back in LA in January.
That's weird.
Yeah. I just saw them. I signed up for them. One of them is pretty big. One of them is 4 days long. So
You should do the one in Spokane.
Spokane?
Yeah, it's huge. It looks nice.
Oh, is that Sakura?
I don't
Con
know.
or something?
I just see it when I drive through Spokane. All right. So, dear listeners, until next time, thank you for joining us, and see you out there.